Hey, everybody. Welcome to a Voice in the Wilderness podcast. Today, man, special treat, man. I'm telling you, I'm excited about you being here, man. I got a brother of mine that I've known for quite some time and knew him. Actually, when did you play?
I was there in 2004 through 2007 at Columbia High School.
Okay, so you were there before I got saved.
Yeah.
So you were there. I was coaching on staff and Coach Bicknel, man, Coach Bicknel. I'm just golly. That's actually the year before I got saved. 2008 is when I got saved.
One of my fondest memories is and every time I see a coach do this, it makes me think of you. But I remember you going out to practice with cleats on.
Yeah.
So everywhere I've been, I see a coach go out to practice with their cleats. Automatically, I think of you. You're the first person I ever saw do it. So.
Yeah. So, I did a devotion a couple of years ago about that. I was talking about we were in the playoffs, and I told the kids, I said, you're going to miss the feeling of your cleats in the grass, man. There's nothing like
it's way better grip.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I get out there sometimes trying to give an example, and I get slipping and sliding. They get to laughing at me. Maybe I should put some cleats on.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. But anyway, so we go way back, and I actually coached when he was here as a player at Columbia High School. And those of you, if you're listening from out of town, we live in Lake City, Florida. The high school here is Columbia High School. And you were a player. I was a coach. It was the year before. You graduated the year before I got saved. And you came back this year. It's 2020.
Wow.
Your journey's kind of brought you back home for the 2020 season. And, man, it was so cool to see you come back. I know you've been in college. So tell the folks out there a little bit about your journey since you left Lake City in 2007.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2007 and went off and played at a couple of places and then got in some trouble, found myself back here in Lake City, and my dad basically told me, he was like, son, you've had people who wanted to pay for your college, and now you're back here. You ain't staying with me. So I had to figure out something. So I went and moved out to Tylertown, Mississippi, where my uncle JC he runs like a rodeo company. They have a bunch of livestock, bucking horses and bulls and stuff like that. So I ended up out there in Tylertown working for him. I was working for him for probably about almost 7 months, and I finally asked him one day, I was like, Uncle JC, you ever going to pay me? And he said, son, I'm giving you a place to live and giving you 3 meals a day. I've been paying you since the day you got here. And I kind of thought to myself, it's probably about time I get back in school somewhere and move on. So I ended up at Southern Miss, which was right down the road from his house, maybe about 30, 45 minutes. And I was had walked onto the baseball team at Southern Miss, and one day I was going to the batting cages. I don't think I've told you this story, but one day I was going to the batting cages, and I had been going to a church there in Petal, Mississippi, just a little suburb kind of Hattiesburg, and I had seen this guy that I had gone to church with, Brother Odom, and he was stopped on the side of the road at a yard sale, and I just kind of honked my horn at him, and he kind of gave me that look like, come over here, I need some help. So I pulled in, and he had a bunch of corrosion on his battery. We kind of knocked it off, jumped his truck off, and then I kind of head back on towards the batting cages, and then there was a wreck right in front of me, and I kind of thought to myself, this is going to sound terrible, but I kind of thought to myself, I've already done my good deed for the day. I'm gonna go around. And I did. I pulled off the road, and I kind of glanced out of the side of my eye, and the lady that got in this wreck, she looked very similar to my grandma. And I was like, man, if that was my grandma, I'd want somebody to stop and help her. So I stopped, and I started helping her get her stuff out of her car. She had totaled her car, and she was filling out her police report. And then she was like telling me, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. I was like, I'm honestly on my own time. So I have no problem helping. We get in my truck, and I'm driving her home, and she's like, well, what are you doing? Well, why are you here? And I was like, well, I'm in school at Southern Miss. And she's like, well, for what? And I was like, I'm actually in the HPR department, taking some coaching classes. Southern Miss actually has one of the top coaching schools in the country. So that's divine intervention that I ended up at Southern Miss, taking coaching classes, because that's basically what I am doing now. And she was like, so what's your plan? And I said, well, I guess I'll just graduate and go coach high school football and, this and that. She goes, well, you ever thought about coaching in college? And I said, oh, I'd love to coach in college, but it's just so hard to get into. And she said, well, I'm Larry Fedora's secretary, the head football coach at Southern Miss. If I can get you an interview, would you be interested? And I said, yes, ma'am. And that was on a Tuesday. It was on a Monday. I interviewed on a Wednesday, got the job, and she retired on Friday.
Wow.
So I was like, that was the Lord who put me in that situation. I didn't have to stop, but I ended up stopping. I'm very thankful that I did, and I've been coaching since. I never even played baseball. I've been coaching since. So
that is great, man. See, I didn't know that story at all, but that's awesome, man. I love that. That's just the way God works. So you know what I'm saying? It's
Amen.
Just people don't realize, man, how detailed things like that happen. These little details in your life. I talk about, God bringing people into your life at the exact time for the exact purpose. And so you've been in college coaching for a little while now, and you decided that you were going to come home and you were going to coach, and so you wind up coming to Columbia in 2020 when we are dealing with COVID, man.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know much about football, they have great football players work insanely hard for what they do. A lot of people wonder why they cry when they lose and stuff like that, but the effort and the time that they put in is second to none in anything I've ever watched.
For sure. When you talk about these kids waking up at 5:30 in the morning to do workouts, and then they'll work out till from 5:30 till 7 or 7:15, and just enough time to shower and go eat breakfast before their 8:00 class, and then they go to class all day, and then as soon as they're out of class, they're back down there watching film. It's a very special what those kids put into it. There's a reason why they get emotional at the end, because they do put in a ton of work.
And that's why they play so hard. That's what's so – and I'll be honest with you, man. I love college football, but my favorite by far is high school football. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you why. It's just different. It's just different. And what I mean by that is especially in a place like Columbia, you get to grow up and be friends your entire life, and then you all come together. You play on all these other little teams when you're in Little League, and you're on the Elks and I'm on the Panthers and all that kind of stuff. And then you get to high school, and everybody comes together, and you get to play these 4 years of high school football as brothers. And there's just nothing like that. And all the people in the hometown, your family, they get to come watch you, and you just have this. And I tell these kids in high school all the time, I'm like, man, for whatever you do not take it for granted. Because there's nothing in life that will ever be comparable to what you're dealing with right now. Going out there and going to battle with your brothers and having a common goal and being like-minded. There's just to me, there's nothing like that. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. It's some of the best memories I've ever had. And so you come home. We have had absolutely no summer training, which those of you that don't know much about it, Columbia, the way we kind of operate in the summer is we will work out Monday through Thursday, and we usually get to the weight room in the neighborhood of about 8 or 8:30, and the kids will eat breakfast, and they usually don't leave until noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're working out or running or doing some kind of a workout in that period of time, and they do it 4 days a week the entire summer. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have any of that in 2020. We had none. They didn't get the chance to meet because Coach Allen is dealing with a unique circumstance in his home with one of his daughters. Right. And he wasn't able to actually – he was kind of just trying to protect his family because she's her immunity is compromised right now. And so tough situation. I love Coach Allen. He's like – honestly, he's like family to me because I coached him. And to watch him have to make that decision, man, was I felt his pain because – how do you decide what you're going to do with something you've invested a decade of your life in? Right. When the other side of it is protecting your family. I mean, that's just I prayed for him, man. You have no idea how much I prayed for him. So you walk into this. Yeah. And what does that look like when you walk into it?
Well, it's again another kind of a crazy story. So I'm back home, and I had gone back to school, got my master's degree, graduated in December. Kind of started interviewing for some jobs and stuff, and then coronavirus hit, and basically mostly all schools across the country went on hiring freezes. And so I was doing DoorDash and Instacart and just about anything I could do to make some money. And one of my sisters sent me this deal where Coach Woodley was looking for people to work in his gun shop.
Oh, people are buying guns like crazy right now.
So I text John because, I've known John for years and years. And I text John and I say, hey, man, I was wondering if you still had any openings available. I'd like to come work. And at that time, I did not know that John was the interim head coach at the high school. So John is thinking that I'm texting him asking about a coaching job, and he says, yeah, man, come up and see me on, whatever day, a couple days later in the week, come up and talk to me and we'll figure something out. So I'm thinking, all right, well, good. Now I'm going to find me some work. I'm going to be all right. And I go up to talk to John. He's like, yeah, man, we're going to have a couple extra coaching stipends. We could really use you. We got some guys that aren't going to be here. We need some help. And I said, I was talking about working at the gun shop. And he goes, well, we need you to help coach football. So it ended up being the perfect situation because I don't really know much about guns, but I know a little bit about football. So,
hey, I don't think you need to know anything about guns right now to sell them, man. Hey, it shoots, and here's some bullets for it.
Yeah, so I started basically maybe a week or 2 weeks before we played Trinity Christian our first game. So it was, basically bang bang, and that's when when the team started. So it was a unique situation to start really that late in coaching, but getting out there the same time the kids were, just a week or two before we played our first game. I think actually it was 2 weeks before we played our first game.
So I come, because I'm the team chaplain or the team character coach, whatever you want to call it, at Columbia High. And so I come out and I see you're there, and I'm like, okay, Cason's back. And I hadn't seen you in years. I've kind of been in touch with you here and there, but for the most part, I hadn't seen you in a long time, man. And so you're back, and immediately I'm thinking, because I haven't talked to you about your faith or nothing like that. And so I'm going back to when I was on the team, and
right.
Out of everybody on the team in that little time, you were a dedicated player, but you were dedicated into everything else like I was.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I tell you, like I was telling you earlier, the best thing ever happened to me is when I moved out to Mississippi, and I was working on that ranch and had a lot of time just to pray and to, my family out there, they were big into reading the Bible and stuff. And not that I never was, but it was something to where living in Tylertown, Mississippi is about the equivalent of living in a town smaller than Fort White. So there's nothing to do.
Right.
And so we worked on the ranch, and I had a younger cousin of mine who was, he's a sharp guy. His name's Carson. And we would read, and he just so intellectual the way he would pick it apart, and we would have some really in-depth conversations, and during that time I started listening to a lot of gospel music, and Johnny Cash gospel albums are some of my absolute favorite.
Yeah, man.
And to be honest with you, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. There was a little church that was right down the road, and the only thing that our uncle would let us do really was, our only free time we had was be able to go to church on Sunday morning. So I took full advantage of that. That was my only time to have off from working on the ranch. So
people don't realize, man, I lived on a farm with my sister and her husband when I was in junior high for about a year. And man, it was work in the morning, go to school, come back and work all afternoon until dinner. Yeah. There's so much to do on a ranch or a farm.
It never stops.
It's crazy. But so.
And the best thing about it, Coach, is that I'm outside the whole time, and you get to. We would start before the sun, but you get to see the sunrise every day. Well, that's God's creation. Every morning is anew.
Right.
No sunrise is the same. They're all different. They're all kind of the same, but they're all different in their own way. And just kind of being outside and being in the outdoors that that the Lord has made, and it's just something about that too. Just really just made everything kind of full circle out there for me.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, man, you when I saw you on staff, I was like, okay, and then I went to the first game, and I'm watching, and I used to coach. I coached forever, and I know how intense it gets, and I'm watching you go up down the sideline, and I'm listening in a little bit. I'm kind of hearing some stuff, and I'm like, And then I saw a Facebook post. I don't know if you caught wind of this, but there was a Facebook post that came out about the language.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have Facebook. So.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
But there was a post that came out, and I kind of came across it, and it was somebody complaining about the language.
Yeah.
And that's something that, as a born again believer at this point, that's one of the things that I do with what I do with FCA is I'm trying to help coaches develop and grow in their faith. And one of the things about that is God will clean that up.
Yeah.
God will clean up a lot of things in your life if you give him a chance. And so I looked at that post and I started praying about it. And it was specifically the post was specifically concerning something that you had said. I thought I'm not positive, but I thought it was.
Very well could have been.
And I said, okay. So I started, just because it says pray without ceasing. So I just started kind of praying about it,
right.
God, because one day I would love to see my son play, and I don't want him to be in an environment that's not conducive to my faith. And so I started praying about it. And then John, just at the end of the season, towards the end of the season, John texted me and said, hey, we got somebody to do Coach Woodley. Coach Woodley says we got somebody to do the devotion this week. And I'm like, okay, cool. I said, I'm going to come anyway. I'd love to. It doesn't matter who it is to me. And so I get there not knowing who it was, and it was you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I got it. All right, so God does what God does, and I'm just patient with it. And I look at it, and I'm like, okay. And I started listening to you. And then the second week, I came back prepared to do it, and that's when you walked up to me, and you said, hey, man, I got a little something I want to say. And I said, wait. You prepared something? And you're like, yeah. And I said, no. You do it.
Yeah.
You do it.
Right.
And you're like, no. And I'm like, listen, man, this is my touchdown. This is my, championship to watch a player embrace the calling that God's placed on your life. And you get up and you ask the entire team to pray for you about your language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, man, I almost started crying when you did that, because I had been praying about that. And that was something that is important to me as a man of God, is to see these young men have an opportunity to be in an environment that builds them up and enriches them.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what brought you to that, because to me, for you to stand up in front of your kids that you've been coaching and ask them to pray for you in that area, man, that was monumental in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there was a few things that have happened to me along the way that have kind of led me to that. One of my first jobs that I had right out of school from Southern Miss was at Southwest Mississippi Community College, and I worked for a great head coach, a guy named Tucker Peavy. I was also working there with some of my best friends, a guy named Cam Acord and another guy named Jamie Everett. And it was honestly, since I have never worked in an environment like that since I left there, but Tucker had a rule that there was no players, no coaches, nobody was allowed to cuss. And that was honestly one of the best environments that I've been in. And when you get to where you're not cussing all the time, you actually do a lot more teaching.
Right.
Cussing can be such a crutch for a coach, because it's easy to get caught up in your emotions, and it's easy to get so competitive where you get to cussing. And I told the kids, I was like, I had some conversations and thought about some things, and I want to be a teacher, and that's what coaching is, teaching. And I just knew that for what I want to do and who I want to be, I don't want to be that guy out there cussing all the time. I didn't even see the Facebook post, but the Lord was putting something on my heart. And there've been in other situations where I've been around in coaching environments where that's all they do is cuss, and there's no teaching going on. And it gets to a point where kids will quit listening to you. They tune you out. They don't listen to it anymore. And I just want to be one of those guys that while I'm going to still coach hard, I don't want to be out there cussing.
Right.
I don't think it's conducive to a healthy learning environment, even though there's still times where I still slip and I could still do better, but that's something that I'm really trying to focus on and do better at. And then there was another time in my coaching career where I did a really good job of it. And this is going to sound terrible, but I was on, I don't know if have you ever seen Last Chance U on Netflix?
I have watched it. Yeah.
Okay. So I was at East Mississippi Community College for season 2 of that. And, the head coach that was there, he's an animal. He's crazy. He's wild. He cusses and does all that. But it was very eye-opening for me that while I was there, there's cameras around you all the time. Everywhere you go, there's a camera in your face. You're eating lunch in the cafeteria, there's a camera in your face. You're in a meeting, there's a camera in your face. And And during that time, I was very self-conscious of that camera being around. And I didn't want to, do anything to embarrass my family or, maybe hurt my image down the road. And I remember having some very specific conversations with my mom about it. And my mom said something to me that really kind of stuck with me. She said, well, shouldn't you always coach as if there's a camera in your face?
Oh, that's good, man.
And then she even went on after that to say, while there may not necessarily be a camera in your face, the Lord is always watching everything you do. So those are some things that stuck with me. And then the last couple of years, I was on some staffs that weren't necessarily the greatest when it came to language. And it's just amazing, like the people that you are around all the time and how you kind of start to begin to kind of be like the people that you're around, whether you like it or not. So, I mean, that's why when people say, you need to choose your friends wisely, it's a real thing because the more you're around people, the more you start to kind of act like one another. And so it was just something that kind of struck me during the season. I was like, here I am. I'm kind of acting like who I don't want to be. And the best thing to do is to be honest. I think honesty is the best policy. And I straight up I was like, I heard the song one Sunday, I need the prayers of those I love. Well, I love those kids, and I need those kids to pray for me to help me. I need to quit cussing. And you know what was funny? After I asked them to not only pray for me to quit cussing, when I did, they would check me. They were like, Coach, I thought you weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
They'll
hold you accountable.
Oh yeah, they were holding me accountable. Like, Coach, I didn't think you was going to cuss no more. I was like, and I got to where if I do, y'all tell me I'm going to bust out 10 push-ups. And I get out and I'd bust out my 10 real fast. But as the week started going from that, I noticed that I started doing it less and less. But that was the Lord helping me. I didn't do that by myself.
I just wanted, I hate to say it like this because I'm not, I'm proud that you did that, but it's not really a pride issue. It's man, when you did that, I was like, man, that was huge. I mean, that's taking ownership. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so easy to blame somebody else or to ignore something, but to take ownership of something. And so you wound up giving the devotions all the way out until we lost in the playoffs last weekend. And I thought the one you did at the final game we played was my favorite one you had done. And not only was it my favorite one that you had done, but I started seeing you get more comfortable with standing in front of the guys and actually sharing because I started seeing more of your heart.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I want to make sure that I encourage you, man. I know that the journey in coaching is going to probably take you other places. And I want to encourage you, man, to just remember this. As believers, we have two options. We can allow other people to affect us and influence us, or we can be the one that influences them. And I just want to encourage you, man, because the passion that you show as a coach is rare. But, taking that passion and just inserting your faith into that passion will take you to heights that we can't, as humans, we can't even comprehend in our mind, because God says that he can do things that are beyond what we can imagine. Now, my imagination is pretty vivid. I don't know about yours, but if he can go beyond what I can imagine,
right?
And that's the thing is that the reason I really wanted to bring you on and have you on a podcast and invite you in was because I just wanted to kind of find out what brought you to where you're at, and kind of just let people know, man, that you don't have to be perfect to serve Jesus. You just got to be willing to constantly evolve.
Right. Well, and the thing is, Coach, and that I've noticed about me a long time ago is I'm not perfect. I'm nowhere close to it. And I need Jesus.
Right.
I need him. And it's crazy because I had this conversation with a family friend a couple nights ago, and she's not necessarily a believer. And she said, well, I've talked with God and I'm good. And I said, okay, well, have you talked to his son?
Ooh.
Because the only way through the Father is through the Son. And she, well, I don't need to, blah, 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 this and that. I know I'm a good person. And I said, well, see, that's where I think you're wrong. Because, if you really get to know the Lord and know him better, you realize that really none of us are good people. The only good that is in us is what the Lord is given us.
Right.
And I just know I've listened to a couple of your podcasts before I came in. I'm just glad there's not a screen over my head with all my thoughts and stuff flashing. I need the Lord. I need him constantly, daily. And the only, and like she said to me, she's like, "You don't think you're good?" And I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Well, I disagree with you." And I said, "Well, the only good that is in me is that the Lord's put it in me, not that I am on my own. I promise you."
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you a story when I first got born again that happened to me, man. I'm gonna share it with you. I've shared it with a bunch of people, but I don't think I've shared it on the podcast. So there was I don't know, have you ever watched the Bible series that came out? There was a series, like a television series that came out, and I think they were, I can't remember, 1 hour shows or what have you, but there was a series of them that went through stories of the Bible. And so one night, my little boy, he's 10 now, but he was just running around in a diaper. And my wife had gone off to a CHS beauty pageant, and I was there by myself with my boy. And it was the episode where Jesus was betrayed. And so the scene was as he was standing up on the steps with Pilate, and they had Barabbas and Jesus, and Pilate was saying, "Hey, it's customary for us to release a prisoner at Passover, I think it is." And so he had Jesus and he had Pilate. He had Jesus Barabbas. And he had Barabbas. Yeah. And I think what Pilate was doing was trying to get out of this whole situation with Jesus. He was trying to. Yeah, so he brought the worst cat out, trying to get out of it because his wife was warning him about a dream, and he was just trying to get out of that whole thing. And the people start yelling Barabbas, and there's a scene where the camera. Jesus turns and he looks over at Barabbas, and the camera catches Jesus's face looking over at him. And when that scene came on, I just felt the Lord say to me, "You do realize that you're Barabbas."
Right.
And it just, man.
You daggum right.
Tears. I'm like, it's my fault he got crucified.
Yeah.
It's my fault. See, it wasn't the world's sin that I was looking at anymore. It was I took ownership of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's my fault.
Right. For sure.
If everybody else would have lived perfectly, it would have been my fault that he had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, and so I had to actually pause it because I was so emotional. And then I turned it back on, and it shows the scene where Jesus is walking the cross down up to Golgotha, and he fell and he couldn't carry it anymore. And one of the soldiers reaches up and grabs Simon and says, "Help him carry his cross." And he snatches him out. And Simon bends down and grabs the cross and starts helping Jesus carry it. And then the Lord said to me, he said, "You were Barabbas, but now you're Simon because you're helping my son carry his cross." You've answered the call. And
wow.
I was weeping so hard. When my wife walked in, one of my daughters had a friend that had never met me. And she comes walking in the door, and I'm sitting there, and I'm talking about like making noise crying, not just crying. I'm making noise crying. And she kind of looked at me, and she's like, "Is he okay?" And it was just one of those moments for me where I finally took ownership of the fact that it's my fault.
Right.
That Jesus had to go and be crucified on the cross so I could be set free. But
I was just about to say, I felt like after that, I'm sure you felt relieved that you felt free.
Right. Absolutely. Because it was the decision that I made in 2008. I said, "God, I want what you want for my life." And what he wants for all of us, not just me. He wants this for everybody that's listening.
Right.
He wants us to answer the call, and he wants us to be able to reach other people and go out there and be the hands and feet and love people. And, that's what we're missing so much in our culture right now is love.
For sure.
And what? We were talking about the coach at Indiana, and I saw a clip today on Facebook, and I put it on my Facebook of his players coming by, and I'm going to put it on this podcast so people can see it. But his I think their slogan was
Elio.
Love. Yeah. What is it? How is it?
Love each other.
Love each other.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something, man. I was watching that little 15, 20-second clip, and I'm in here crying today. I'm just like, that's what coaching's about, man.
Absolutely.
That's exactly that's why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
And so why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
Because I want to help other coaches understand that the soldier's reaching in the crowd and saying, "Come on.
Yeah.
Help him."
And I would like to think that the kids that I've coached in the past would say that I love them. I may coach them hard, but I love them hard too.
Well, if you love them, you'll coach them hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I only want the best for you, and I would like to think that there would be a lot of kids who say that, I tell them I love them and I want them to know it. And I try to not just tell them, but I try to show them that I love them too. But I think you're right, Coach. That's what the world needs, man. The world needs love. The world needs love. But, we can only love because Jesus first loved us. And I think that one of the biggest problems is that, especially us as a country, we're starting to turn our back on Jesus. And we're wondering what the problem is. Well, the problem is we turn our back on Jesus. We're turning our back on love, and we're turning our back on loving one another. And that we got to get back to doing that, following Jesus and loving one another. It says I want to say in Matthew that, they asked the Lord, they were trying to trip him up. They said, what's the great commandment? And he said, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind. And then he went on further to say the second is like unto it, but to love thy neighbor as thyself. That's
right. And that's so cool because you go back to the Good Samaritan. If you go back and you look at that story, they were trying to stump him up there too. And it's the attorney or the smart guy or whatever, the educated guy. He comes up to him and he says, how do you inherit eternal life? And they go through this list of the 10 commandments or whatever they do, and he's talking about that. But if you go back and you read that entire story, what it boils down to is Jesus at the end of it, he says, now which one of them, which one of them loved him, or which one of them would have eternal life? He was asking. And it was the one that took care of the guy, the one that helped him, the one that put him up. And so it all boiled down to this. Which one has eternal life? It's the one that sees a need and meets it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's love. You see a need and you meet it.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about coaching is that when you get around these kids, there's all kind of different needs in these kids' lives. We were talking about some of the kids today. Some of them need discipline.
Yeah.
Some of them need hard love. Some of them need tender love. Some of them need compassion. Some of them need to be you need to build them up and you need to make them understand how valued they are.
Yeah.
Some of them you need to extend some grace. I met with my mentor today and he said, you need to be strong in grace. In other words, don't be so quick to get offended. Don't be so quick to get mad at people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, man, I still coach my little boys' teams. And so they're little league and it's a lot different coaching down there because they just are young and they don't get it. And it was a big change for me going from high school to little league.
Oh yeah, sure.
But you still have that same opportunity to be an example to these young guys, and they're so green right now. So let me ask you this, man, because I'd love to see you stay. I really would, man, because I love your energy. I love the direction that you're going in your life. I love to see what the Lord's doing in your life. But what is your where do you see Coach Cason Bicknel? Where do you see Coach Cason Bicknel over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I want to let the Lord lead me to where He wants me to be.
Amen.
But I really want to be a head coach. That's what I've been striving for. I've put myself in a position where I've coached every position. I've done offense, defense, special teams, coordinated all 3 phases. I've been a director of football operations. I've been a strength and conditioning coordinator. I've been an equipment guy. I think that I've put myself in a position to where, I've had my hand in a little bit of everything. I'm very thankful for what Coach Allen has given me the opportunity to do here. I told him I'm not opposed to coming back, but I'm going to need to get me a job at the high school where I can at least make some money. I do have some bills to pay, but I've also had some conversations with him. He knows I want to be a head coach. So we'll see. My biggest thing is I want to be where the Lord wants me to be. So I'm not going to try to necessarily push anything, but I am going to ask because I like I was telling those kids the last couple of weeks, you have not because you ask not. I'm definitely going to pray and ask the Lord that He'll put me somewhere where I can lead a program. And I do think that it's going to happen sooner than later. I don't know what that time is exactly, but I would like to be a head coach. One of my favorite places that I have coached is in Mississippi Junior College because it's actually kind of a great mix of it's not high school, but it's not like full-fledged college. It's kind of a mixture of the two, and it's a great environment to be in. Or, I could see maybe I get a foot in the door at one of those just because I have some experience in that league. I know the state very well. And like I told you, in that league, you can only have 8 out-of-state players, so you better know the state of Mississippi pretty well. So I could see maybe getting a jump start in that league and maybe catapulting from there. But at the end of the day, I just want to be where the Lord wants me to be, and where I can help His children the best. To be honest with you.
Well, so this is the deal. If you get back out of Mississippi, I just got one request, man. I want to come and hunt some of those deer out there.
Oh man, there's some big deer out there now.
Man, it's not fair. Honestly, I'll be honest with you. For a Florida guy, it's not fair when I see all this.
When I was in the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, there were some huge deer walking around that Mississippi Delta. It's just soybean fields. And
they got food.
Corn all over the place. And, there's not a ton of population there either. So there's probably more deer in the Mississippi Delta than there are people.
Yeah.
But there's some big ones walking around that river, I promise you.
Well, I'm ready. If you go back out there, all you got to do is call me and I'll come. I mean,
yes, sir.
I'll load up the dually. We'll put some ice.
They're out there now, I can tell you.
I'll bring some. Yeah. We'll take some kids that ain't never been hunting.
Also, when I spent time in scuba on the east side of Mississippi, there's some good hardwoods around there too. Some big deer walking around there in scuba.
The first guy I ever led to the Lord lives in Mississippi.
How about this? It's funny because I'm just talking about these Mississippi JUCOs are a lot of them in very rural places. And when I was at East Mississippi, there was an old guy who was kind of like a maintenance type guy who lived on campus. He lived right across from the dorm that I lived in when I was there. And I would go out at night and just kind of go for a little walk around campus. Sometimes that's my favorite time, to just go for a little walk by myself and pray a little bit. And I saw him doing something. And I was like, what is he doing? I would always I talk to anybody. I love talking to people. It's something that I just love. I'll talk to anybody, don't matter who it is, don't matter where they're from. I don't care. And so I was like, what is he doing over there? And this is probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I walk up on him, and he's skinning a deer. And I was like, I can't. I'm trying to think right now what the guy's name is. I could tell you, if I hadn't started telling the story, I could have told you, but he's got a knife in his hand. And I said, what you doing? He turns around with that knife and he says, boy, I was about to cut you. I thought you was a game warden. I said, well, what are you doing skinning that deer? He said, I just shot it underneath that old spot, or that old street light over there. He said, I had my bow, and I've been putting corn there every night, and he'd been going there eating. I got up, put that bow on him, and so here we are. And I said, well, I ain't going to tell on you, but I want some of that meat.
A little blackmail.
Yeah, sure enough, he fried some up 2 nights later, and he gave me a good little bit of it. That was a good deal, though. But that's one of the things I like being out there. You just got them kind of country people. It's fun. And but, yeah, there's some good-sized deer walking around.
The first guy I led to the Lord was from Mississippi. We were at a retreat in Alabama, and there's 100 guys in this room, and we're listening to guys give talks and stuff, and for some reason, man, he just kind of picked me out of the whole group. Yeah. And he comes over and he's like, I need to talk to you, man. And his name was Ed Clemens. And so I said, okay, man. And he's like, I don't get all this. I don't understand this. Y'all raising your hands and you're singing out loud, and I don't get all this, man. I don't understand it. And I'm like, I said, just hang on, man. You just don't anticipate. Just, it's all good. And so he, the next day he comes to me, man. And he goes, I've got to talk to you, man. I said, okay. So we walk outside, and there's this little porch out there. And he says, man, I can't take it no more, man. I said, what? And he goes, how do you accept the Lord, man? How do you do this? And I said, you just got to pray and ask him and repent. And I said, like something like this, like, Lord, I've messed up my life. And when I said that, he just took off and just started, I'm a bad husband. I'm a bad father. He just started weeping and fell on his knees, man. And he just was it was just crazy. I mean, I didn't even have to, he did it all on his own.
Yeah.
And so we get through all that, man. And we're crying, and we baptize him. It's like 40 degrees outside. And we baptize him in the lake. It was crazy. And so we get back up to the room. And at the very end of the weekend, he got a letter from his teenage daughter. I think she was maybe 18, 19, somewhere in that neighborhood at that time. And he's reading this letter, and he starts crying so hard that I honestly thought we were going to have to, like, help him or something because he couldn't breathe. I mean, he was just, like, I'm talking about uncontrollably weeping. I've never seen anybody cry as hard as Ed was crying that time. And I looked at another guy and I said, what in the world is in that letter, man? And he looked back and he said his daughter said that she was going to stay home all weekend and pray that he would get saved.
Wow.
And, man, it was like crazy.
Wow.
So the first guy I ever led to the Lord was the story of it. And it was just like, and we still keep in contact. He lives in Mississippi. and I'm gonna send you this. I'm gonna send you this podcast, Ed, because I still haven't been invited to come hunting.
What part of Mississippi is he in?
He's in the east side, kind of a midway up somewhere.
Probably around Meridian or something.
I don't know exactly the name of the town, but he's a diesel mechanic. He's just a real manly man. So to see God work on his heart like that was so cool. Yeah. But that first day he was freaking out because we were praising, worshiping, with hands in the air, and men crying and singing, and he just was like, I don't know, this is all crazy to me. It was really good, but I'm coming to shoot a deer now, Ed. It's been a while. It's been a minute, but no, he'll let me come out. He's invited me. I just got to take the time to go.
Yeah, it ain't that far, Coach. You need to go on out there now.
So when you go next time, holler at me, man. We might just go over and see Ed.
Yeah,
and his son Eric.
Yeah, I got quite a few people all over that state. We can make us a little trip.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, thank you so much for coming, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm telling you, man, it's this year, man, you have not only did you guys go from 0-5 to making it to the final 8 in the state in your division, man, which was absolutely amazing, but just watching God do what he's doing in your life this year has been so fun for me, man, and to watch how you're developing and to know that sooner or later God's going to give you this opportunity to be the man that makes the decision on where you go spiritually with a football program is encouraging because you know what we need in our country, Coach? We need godly men discipling godly men. We desperately need that. And so, Billy Graham says it, and I say it on this podcast all the time. A coach will impact more lives in 1 year than most people will in a lifetime. And when coaches get a revelation of that and they understand that the responsibility that God's placed into their hands and the platform that he's given them, that's when everything changes. And, I know Coach Allen, that's where he's at right now. He's gotten a revelation of that over the last couple seasons, and he's been opening up that spiritual aspect of the program, and God's going to continue to bless it. And I think that was a lot of what we saw this year was God's favor on his dedication to allowing that spiritual aspect with me and you and other people and even himself in the football program. So whatever it is that you do from this point forward, man, I just want to tell you, I'm going to put you on my prayer board up here. You're going to be on our prayer board.
I need it.
And we're here for you, man. Anytime you need anything, you want to do something in the outdoors with some of your players and stuff like I've talked to you about, that's what we are all about, man. So you just kind of keep in touch with me. I'm so glad that God crossed our paths again.
Yes, sir.
And, man, I just thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for your focus on your relationship. I thank you for what you're doing. And I thank you for investing in the young men in our community.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, and all glory be to God.
Amen. And you know what I loved out of everything that you said today? I just want what God wants for me.
Yes, sir.
When you get to that point in your life, man, and you start thinking that way, you can't go wrong. Listen, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared in advance for us to do. It's good works, and the provision that we need to do it has already been set forth.
Right.
And all we got to do is, just like you said, ask, seek, and knock, and
That's
God
right.
will open up the door. So, man, listen, I love you. Thank you for being here, Coach. Man. I look forward to seeing what God's going to do with you. If you guys want to learn more about FCA, go to fcaod.org, fcaod.org, and you can find out all you want about the ministry. You can support the ministry. And if you would, click subscribe, and you get a little reminder whenever we release a podcast. And you guys, if you like the podcast and you enjoy it, you think it's good, please share it with other people so we can get to a broader audience, because what we want to do is we want to impact the kingdom. And we want to do it in any way that we can, whether it's through an article in Woods of Water, whether it's a trip that we take people on, or whether it's a podcast, man. We're just trying to do what we can to reach people. So you can help us reach people by sharing and clicking and making sure that you listen to the podcast. So we thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We love you. And remember, it's your decision. Make a good one. See you later.
Thank you for listening to a Voice in the Wilderness podcast with Skipper Hare. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can also learn more about FCA Outdoors by going to fcaod.org. Check out the Woods and Water magazine, which comes out once a month. Skipper writes an exciting article for FCA Outdoors. You can pick them up in most convenience stores in the Southeast region. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel Hair Days Uncut to follow all the podcasts from Skipper and his friends.